Welcome to Fortress of Faith with Tom Wallace, calling North America to repentance and revival.
Welcome once again to the Corner of Truth and Courage. You're listening to Fortress of Faith. This is Tom Wallace. Well, this is going to be our fifth and last part on dealing with Islamic terrorism. And we've been kind of going through, some of the organizations that are, happening in America and around the world, the threats that are facing America. And I want to continue a little bit more in that because during the Obama administration, as I said in yesterday's broadcast, he put America into grave danger by putting a number of people who were connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a terrorist organization coming out of Egypt. They've been banned by Egypt. They've murdered one of its former presidents, and they they took power again back in 2011, but illegally seized power that didn't belong to them. Thank goodness for al-Sisi, their current president, at the time in general. He stepped in and brought law down into the country and kicked out the Muslim Brotherhood. The people did. Another revolution occurred a few years later. But they have front groups, as I've been talking about, operating here in America. CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations. NATE, North American Islamic Trust, that's the bank. 80% of our mosques in America are owned by that. ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, that's the grassroots organization. CARE, as I mentioned earlier, is the political, when they lobby our government, and they're in Washington, D.C., well-funded, but all connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. And then, of course, the MSA, Muslim Student Association, they have chapters in just about every state college in America, most of our high schools of major cities, and even junior high schools. And we've seen their influence here this last year with all the protests going on at college campuses. That was MSA, that was a Muslim Student Association that was behind that. And, of course, they're protesting because we're at war against Hamas. Well, Hamas is their military wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. So when Obama was president, he put people into government. I'm going to name them here in a minute, some of these folk, and what's going on currently in America. But first, let me explain my sources. I do not bring anything to the radio that I cannot back up with credible sources. I get a lot of emails from you, and this stuff flutters around on social media and all that stuff, and I hear from you, and thank you. Do send me stuff that you see and hear, because stuff doesn't always cross my radar, but I've got to back it up before I bring it to the radio. But there are some good organizations that also do very, very good work in this area, and some of these people have a background there that is very, very credible. For example, Gaffney, who started the Center for Security Policy. He has a stellar background in the Defense Department here in America. In fact, he was appointed under the Reagan administration for all his work and did other things there through the years. And so he's retired and started this, and they've kept a very, very close eye on Islamic terrorism. The IPT, which is started by Steve Emerson, who's a journalist. He has done a lot of good work and background work on this subject. Then you've got Jihad Watch and the Freedom Center, the David Horowitz Freedom Center. My good friend, John Guandolo, Understanding the Threat. He's a former FBI agent. He wrote the very first dossier on the Muslim Brotherhood for the FBI. That was his bag for many, many years, and Obama threw him out. And so Obama, when he came in, he took out a lot of people in government that really knew and understood the problems that we have with Islam, didn't like what they had to say, and removed them, put our country in very deep trouble. By the way, another group I should have mentioned at the front, Act for America, Brigitte Gabriel, journalist who was raised in Lebanon and Israel, and here in the States, a great grassroots movement here in America on this very subject. So there's some good sources out there. And so I check that with the original sources. I check it with people and organizations like this. before I bring these things to you on the radio, because if you're on national radio and if you're not credible, you're going to get washed out real quick. Trust me. And I've only, of 14 years of broadcasting, only one time had to withdraw on one comment that I made. And it was just a comment. I really wasn't putting it forward as, hey, here, folks, here's what's coming down. It was just something out there, a comment there, and I did get it wrong. And I will probably get some things wrong in the future from time to time. I'm a human, but we work really, really hard here at Fortress of Faith to make sure that what we bring you is accurate and credible. So here's what we have. There were breaches being put into our government for our national security because Obama had put in people like Omar al-Amari, Mohammed Majid, Mohammed al-Bari, and Dalia Mogahid. These people held high positions in Homeland Security as either advisors or actually leaders in Homeland Security against Islamic terrorism. And these people had ties to Islamic terrorism. And some of them are still around. I still see Mohammed Majid. There was a picture of him with Trump not too long ago. There's some issues that we still need to keep our eye on and to keep informed. Today in Congress, we have 3 Muslims that are in Congress. Andre Carson from Indiana, around the Indianapolis district there. Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib from Detroit, and Ilhan is from Minnesota. She took over Keith Ellison's seat, who's now the Attorney General. He's still a Muslim, but he used to be in Congress representing Minnesota. Ilhan Omar took his seat. And so we're now seeing Muslims being elected. Now, Andre Carson, he is of the Louis Farrakhan Muslim type. He's the Nation of Islam, which is a cult group in the Islamic world. I have more concern from Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, especially Ilhan Omar. And they're not connected tightly with the Muslim Brotherhood, but they will speak at their events for CARE and ISNA and different things. And so they have indirect ties. But one of the more concerning thing in America's history of Islam connection was Hillary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin. Huma Abedin was her shadow for Hillary Clinton during her campaign running for president. And she was married to Anthony Weiner, the disgraced senator, politician. I'm not sure from what state. But I'm here to tell you that was scary to see if Hillary Clinton had become president with the top aide being Huma Abedin, who has very large concerning ties with the Muslim Brotherhood and other terrorist organizations. We dodged a bullet on that one, in my opinion. And I've got time. I want to share with you before we close this topic on Islamic terrorism. Where does it come from? What proof can I give you scripturally that jihad is part of the Islamic way of life? Not every Muslim is living the real Islam. Please understand that there's 2 Islams, real and fake. The real Islam is going to follow Muhammad's teachings and his example, and they're going to follow the scriptures. That's what a real fundamental Christian is going to do. He's going to follow the scriptures. He's going to follow Christ and pattern his life after it and not make apology for it, and he's going to live it with purpose. And the performing of jihad, the best way to explain it is, or the teachings of it, is this really connected to Islam. And the proof of that, yes, is in the Quran. Yes, is in the Hadith, which is the traditions of Muhammad, what he's taught, what he did. But the best source for that, to qualify that, is out of the Sharia law book. Because the Sharia law book is, from the Islam's highest scholars was compiled, and they quote the Quran and quote the Prophet to establish these as laws. And so there's a big book you could get. It's going to cost you $80, $90. Or you can buy my book for $19, which is going to quote everything that you would want to know, like I'm getting ready to. You can get that from giving us a call at our at the office, or send us an email. Right now, we're having trouble with our online bookstore, but you can call us, and the number will be at the end of the broadcast. Get it from there. But let me read from you from section 9.0 on jihad. Jihad means to war against non-Muslims. It is etymologically derived from the word mujahada, signifying warfare to establish the religion. Then it gets down to quoting the Quran, because every law is going to be established on two authorities. It has to have two authorities: the authority of the Quran, the authority of the Prophet. And so then it quotes the Quran, Surah 2:16, fighting is prescribed for you. Surah 4:89, slay them wherever you find them. Surah 9:36, fight the idolaters utterly. Then it quotes the Prophet. And the Prophet said, I've been commanded to fight people until they testify there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and perform the prayer and pay zakah. If they say it, they have saved their blood and possessions from me. And then it quotes him again in another passage and so on there. I don't have time to get into all of that, but then later it gets into who should perform jihad, how they should, who's obliged, and what if you're elderly? Well, then you give so that others can do that. Then it will quote the most famous passage there. It keeps quoting more scriptures. Surah 9:29, fight those who believe not in Allah, nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which has been forbidden by Muhammad and his messenger. And, we could go on and on and on and quote the Prophet. This is a pure teaching of Islam. Thankfully, very few Muslims believe it, or will have the courage to perform it, or have been not taught it because they're taught a perverted version of Islam that leaves the sword in the 7th century, and they only teach the peaceful, kinder, gentler passages. And most Muslims, 80% of the Muslims that are here in the West, are not really familiar with real Islam. And so we can be thankful for that. So don't fear every Muslim that you come in contact with, but know that that's really taught. And it's not, for us in the Bible, we see times that God told the nation of Israel to utterly destroy, like the Amalekites. But that was limited just to the nation of Israel and to a particular people for a limited time. In Islam, the sword is commanded for all time. As long as there's unbelievers, fight them until they submit. And so, they do have a teaching of abrogation, but the war passages are later given, so they abrogate any of the peaceful passages. There's a lot to get into there to unpack. I'm trying to squeeze it in such a short time. But we hope that you'll continue to listen to us here at Fortress of Faith, and I hope that this will be a blessing to you to help you be better educated so you can pray better and take a stand where it needs to in the right way. And that's going to have to be it for today. But we hope you'll join us again next week at the corner of truth and courage. Now go out and be salt and light.